I decided a couple of years ago that I wanted to create a book. I wanted to write a book that was about Celtic Reiki, and it was a little bit like a call to action for Celtic Reiki masters across the world. With the dogma that you spoke about with Reiki, I wanted to sort of put out into the world that it's okay to have your own individual perspective, not only of Celtic Reiki, but of Reiki in general, and of life, and in life. And I thought, right, I'll do this book, and this book will basically act as a way of calling to Celtic Reiki masters across the world and people who are interested in Celtic Reiki, and sort of saying to them, here are some ideas, and bring your ideas to me also. Come, let's share. So I sat down and I thought, right, it's going to be the official guide to Celtic Reiki. This will be the book that I write. And I started to write it, and I got into the first chapter, and there was this sort of etheric tap on my shoulder. It wasn't actually a tap, but it was like a very stern, excuse me, what are you doing? And I'm writing a book, and it's going to be called The Official Guide to Celtic Reiki, and it's going to be a call to action for... no. You need 3 books, and that will be the last one, so you can put that off for a little while, because you don't even know what Celtic Reiki is at the moment. You have no idea. You've only just scratched the surface, so you can leave that one till you know a little bit more about it. And I was like, right, okay, so what are the other 2 going to be about? Well, one's going to be a mastery book, and it will basically offer a framework for the mastery of Celtic Reiki, and you can put all of the things that will help people, guide people, give people a flavour for what Celtic Reiki is about. Right, okay, well, I can do that, that's fine. What's the other one that you want me to write? And it was, I want you to write a storybook. I want you to write a book all about the stories which you created along the way and which you experienced along the way. And that was really how the stories from the Sacred Grove book came about, was this idea of the journey from the roots of Celtic Reiki to now has been quite an amazing adventure. And actually writing those stories down was an incredibly valuable experience for me personally, because it really showed me what Celtic Reiki is about and what it means to me, and it taught me more about Celtic Reiki than I ever thought, because I used to think in terms of essences and techniques and treatments and attunements, and you do this and you do this and you do this. And what the writing of stories actually did for me was it reminded me of all of the individuals that I've met along the way, all of the people that I've ever interacted with and spoken to about Celtic Reiki, but also the trees that I met along the way. And it was really in the discussions about and the stories about my connection to the trees that I really understood just how much I had been changed as a person over the years. And one of my favourite stories from the book is about a Christmas tree. One year, just before Christmas, some friends of mine knocked at the door, very, very pleased, very excited, and they said, we bought you something, we got you a present. I was like, okay, that's nice. And they proceeded to bring in a Christmas tree that had been chopped, and I was mortified. I was like, oh no, I don't want this. But I was being polite, and I was like, well, thank you very much, and thank you, but I was absolutely mortified. I was really sort of quite distraught. And so what I did was, after they'd gone, I unwrapped the Christmas tree and I put him into water, and I worked with him and sort of worked with Celtic Reiki and homeopathy, and was treating him with remedies. One thing that I really got from the tree was this feeling of terror, this feeling of fear. And it reminded me of a child, of like a 5-year-old child who didn't know what was happening or didn't know what was going on. And I knew that feeling. I knew what it's like to be a child and to be scared and frightened. And in many ways there was this resonance. And I think that that's how this communication with the trees works, certainly for me. There's a lot of personal experience in there and a lot of resonance that comes through. So I worked with this tree and was feeling his fear and his pain. And I tried to explain what had happened and what was going to happen, whilst desperately thinking in my head, is there anything I can do? Is there any way that I could save this tree? Could I, reroute it? Is there some way that I could actually... But I couldn't think of anything. I didn't know enough about trees and how they work to actually to be able to save it. So basically, he stayed in my home over Christmas, and during that time, working with him with Celtic Reiki and treating him and working with homeopathic remedies, I saw this evolution in his personality, where he went from being a very small child to being a very wise man in a very short period of time. And that journey was very quick. It was literally from December till about March. And you saw this aging and this gaining of wisdom and this acceptance of what was going to happen and the acceptance of death. And this little Christmas tree, it was tiny, it was only sort of about that high, went through this journey, and each day I could feel the changes, I could feel the wisdom within him growing. And it got to the point where, as spring came and all the trees were coming to life again, and there were new buds, and there was a real air of the year to come and the wonderful things that were in store for the year ahead, and this wonderful new life, there was this feeling from the tree of, this is the way that the earth is, and there are cycles, and there is birth and there is death, and I will die soon. And there was such a profound wisdom in the tree then, that actually he started to teach me, and he taught me a lot. When the summer came and the weather got much hotter, he couldn't survive. He was outside at this point, and he obviously wasn't going to live much longer because the days were getting hotter. His leaves had turned to brown, his spines had turned brown. He was basically just a skeleton, and gradually these fell out, and it was just his frame left, his branches and his trunk. And I could still feel him there, looking out into the world, basically waiting for death, but also enjoying every moment of life. And I really had this sense from this little bundle of twigs that most people would just pass by, that the most important thing in our lives is to take each and every moment that we have and to make something of it, even if we're just sitting there watching the world go by, to really get something from that moment and to make the absolute most of it. Because life is about cycles, life is life at birth, and it's about death. But it's what we do with every moment that we're given which is so important. And the day that the Christmas tree died, I went out into the garden and I knew he wasn't there anymore. I knew he'd gone. The feeling of consciousness, of awareness, just wasn't there anymore. And I wept. I wept for quite a number of days after. And people would look at this grown man with a handful of twigs and they'd say, why? But for me, that necessary grieving process, the grieving for a friend that had left, but had taught me so much, was perhaps one of the most important lessons that I've ever learnt in my life. Because from that point on, it was no longer about death, and I no longer feared death. From that point on, it was about life, and it was about enjoying life and creating a rich and wonderful life, not only for myself, but for everybody that I meet and for everybody that I interact with in life. Because if I, just for a moment, can instill some of that wisdom in another person, as that little Christmas tree did for me, then my life is a wonderful, rich tapestry as well, and there is no fear. So the stories are what make us all. The anecdotes, the lessons, the adventures, the journeys that we have along the way. And if there's anything that I can sort of offer you this evening in gratitude and in thanks for you all coming, it is to enjoy the adventure, to have a wonderful time, and to remember that each moment that we have is something incredibly precious and incredibly wonderful, and love it and enjoy it and grab hold of it and embrace it and live it with everything that you are.